That's my favorite one. A lot of titles.
Honestly, I'm not really a podium person. And how much time do I have? What is it?
Usually it's about 45 minutes plus
Okay.
about 10 minutes for question and answer.
Okay. So I'm Margery Boucher, Clinical Director of Arise Recovery Centers and Private Practice Concierge Clinician in Dallas and in South Lake. So I'm super excited. I mean, half the people I think in this room I know more personally than, just working with you. I mean, y'all are friends, and so it's really an honor for me to be here and be able to talk to y'all about, I think, what's an incredibly important topic, social media and the social impact. So even before getting into this, do you think that there is a social impact regarding social media? Raise your hand if yes. Okay, so it's not like you need me here to tell you that there is, right? I mean, I think we all know that there is. And there is research out there about some of this, but I don't really focus as much with this topic on the research part of it because, again, I mean, this is kind of a new thing. I mean, we're just now really starting to see this crazy impact that social media, gaming, all this stuff is having on our society because we now have kind of this wave, this generation of people who they've been raised now almost like with a phone in hand, right? It's given to them like at the hospital, at birth, it seems like. And so we're starting to see really the implications over time of what's happening with these, not only adolescents, but now the young adults and kind of the emerging adult population. So the objectives for today are going to be what is there social media addiction, internet addiction? Is that really a thing? And is it a problem? I think we all just, endorse the fact that we know it's a problem. We're also going to talk about the subtypes of the different concerning behaviors. So it's not just, someone's on Facebook all the time. There's all these different subtypes that it can fall into. And the DSM-5. So we just had a new version come out a couple years ago of the DSM, the Diagnostic Statistical Manual. And are there criteria? We're going to talk about the criteria that they're going to propose to have for social media addiction, basically. And then the etiology of internet addiction, the negative repercussions. So, not only personally and on society, but also clinically. Like, what are we seeing in practice? How are we seeing it affect people's mental and emotional health? And then treatment. So that's certainly a big one that we really need to start looking at. So when I give presentations, I want interaction because I think, I don't want y'all to fall asleep and get too bored or whatever. But I am going to ask one thing. I'm going to have Phil pass around a basket. Everyone's going to put their cell phones in it. Right? Okay, no, of course I'm not going to do that. However, how high did your anxiety just go? Like, scale of 1 to 10, maybe it was a 5, and you're like, and I say that, and it goes up to what? Like a 10. So probably everyone in here knows, within seconds where to find their phone. Pocket, underneath their leg, wherever. You are attached to it like it's now an extension of your hand. But now I'm not going to have Phil do that. But just kind of wanted to prove a point. Okay, so first I want to talk about the internet and how much usage is too much. Okay? What do y'all think? Throw out some ideas. Like, if you're on your phone or the computer, how much in a day is it okay?
22 hours.
22 hours. 22 hours and we're still good. 4 hours or less. 4 or less. Okay?
When there's a dip in the couch.
Like when you can see an imprint, oh yeah, that's probably a problem, right? If you start getting carpal tunnel, anyone? Okay.
Work phone or personal phone?
So that's a really good point. So part of this idea, and something that's really shifted over the past few years, has been this idea of non-essential use. Okay, so I work with a lot of adolescents and young adults, and up through older adults. And one of the things, a big shift that I've seen, especially in kind of the kids and adolescents, is in school, they are now required, like they have iPads. They do everything on a screen for the most part. Their books, they have, my sister is a web developer for iStation, which is it's online education. This is the trend. And so they've now started dividing it for essential and non-essential use. Okay, so unfortunately our kids might be on the internet or their computer for like 5 hours doing homework or something related to that. And then another 2 hours just doing games or Facebook or some sort of social media. And so we have to, as parents and then as loved ones of people that we might be concerned about, we have to look at the difference there, the essential and non-essential. So of course, non-essential screen time essentially, is gaming, chatting, shopping, gambling, all the things that aren't productive, right? The essential use, that would be, things related to work, school, that sort of thing, okay? Many, many years ago, the American Academy of Pediatrics said 2 hours a day was kind of the cutoff. And a lot of people still really stick to that, but again, just have to look at what's being essential. And I think probably the more important idea is to look at how does someone react when they're on it too long, or how do they react when you're like, you got to get off your tablet, kid. I have 3 kids. They do have tablets. They do watch, cartoons and YouTube things and stuff like that. And I'll tell you, each one of my children reacts differently when I say it's time to get off. So I also know that, typically I'm going to have to rein it all in and not kind of just let, especially that one child, just sit there for too terribly long. So there's still the idea that under 18 months, really they shouldn't be looking at screens, okay? So, why do you think that is? It's not just kind of this arbitrary thing. Any ideas on why you think?
It's because the neuroreceptors are connecting and the brain's expanding, and if they're looking at the screen and even playing games that are supposedly for young kids, they've done enough progression that they are ahead maybe in certain areas, but ultimately it affects their attention span significantly, and it affects their neurodevelopment.
Yep. Absolutely. You want to come over here?
I just preach about this issue to my cousins and stuff that are uneducated, and they literally from the time the baby can hold the phone, they're on the phone playing on it.
Yeah. Yeah, and yeah.
I would think it would also make it difficult for a brain that young to differentiate between reality and the gaming system, because it's very visual. So how does a developing brain differentiate between something they're seeing continuously in 2 dimensions and 3 dimensions? So I think it's more than just the neural development, it's the impact that neural development will have on differentiation between reality and fantasy.
Absolutely, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute as it relates to sexual addiction and pornography and gaming and all of that too.
Was there anything written that you read anywhere that talks about under 18 months and FaceTime? Or
no, I can't say
from
that.
a screen time perspective.
Right. I can't say that I did. One thing that they did talk about was how a lot of times new mothers, if they are, nursing or bottle feeding, that they might be on their phone because it's, either in the middle of the night, let's be honest, or, it's a time to catch up on some things. And But the issue with that, and a lot of people don't think about it, is that is such a bonding time for mother and infant, that they are making eye contact. There's this like emotional connection that happens with that, that if you're on your phone, your kid's looking up at you, it's like, there's a huge disconnect. And so I think it's really, really important for us to educate people that it's not just this arbitrary, you know, shame, shame, you shouldn't have your little kid on a screen, but it really, there are developmental, emotional, you know, behavioral impacts. And even, you know, with feeding children, I mean, there's just the cues of when they're full and, you know, when they might be in distress and things like that. So for the very young ones, and then 2 to 5 years old, they're saying, you know, about an hour of high quality programming. So, you know, things that are educational, songs, those sorts of things. And then 6 years and older, really it does have a lot to do with that independent, you know, looking at each child independently and how they respond. So, you know, sometimes kids who, we see it a lot with kids who have ADHD, and it's a calming thing for them to be on screens and have all this activity going, because it helps them to regulate and calm down. So when you get them off of a screen, that can be a real challenge. And so, you know, you just have to look at it individually based for kiddos like that too. Any questions or other thoughts?
So I see a lot of times that like children in like a car carrier, you know, small children, if they're fussy, and instead of them being grabbed or seeing what their need was, they just stick a phone in their hand, and even at that, like 10 months, you know, they're pacifying them with a phone. And so does that also have a developmental thing?
Sure. Absolutely. I mean, you know, even if it isn't, there's like a brain chemistry thing behind it. I mean, just behaviorally speaking, everything that we do to reinforce a certain behavior, we're going to keep doing, right? Very basic behavioral stuff. So if a child is fussing and, you know, someone hands them this device to watch something, anytime that I want to watch this device, I'm going to fuss and whine, you know? I mean, that can then become a learned behavior. So on that level, it also is impacting things. And then they learn, well, this is the thing that pacifies me. So as they grow older, you know, and we'll talk about kind of the addiction aspect of it, that I have these uncomfortable feelings, I'm going to turn to this thing, okay? Instead of dealing with these feelings, or, you know, mom teaching me how to manage those feelings in that moment, and sit down and say, you know, what's going on, what do we need, you know, and talking through the issue in that moment. It's a very good point. So now moving on to the different types and subtypes of social media, internet gaming. I mean, I don't even know what to call it necessarily. It's just like internet addiction. So there's cyber sex. So this can be like pornography, Skype, video, sex, and you know, I'll tell you this. So there's a couple things about this. Some of the research that's not in this presentation, but I did a presentation for the police department actually in Southlake for a community of families about more so on the issue of pornography and cyber sex. And what I found in that was that really kids, their very first, the largest majority of children, the first time that they experience or have any kind of exposure to pornography is like 10 and 11. Yeah. So that is not good. I mean, that's like really bad. I mean, imagine, you know, 30 years ago, the first experience was probably a kid finding, you know, dad's Playboy hidden under the mattress or something, right? And they're these two-dimensional, non-moving, there's only so much stimulation that they're going to get from that. But when they start seeing things like active images and almost feel like they can interact there, then of course that's going to start kind of setting the bar of sexual stimulation. So that's a big, big issue. And it really does set people up for, you know, later down the line when, let's say they're 18, 19, 20, 25, whatever, and in a sexual relationship with another person, kind of their level of stimulation and excitement is now, it needs to be way up here, because for the past 10 years, they've been able to kind of get whatever kind of excitement they want through the internet. Does that make sense? Because I think to your point earlier, our bodies, the chemicals in our body don't know the difference between fiction and reality. I mean, you know, there's a chemical surge watching pornography the same way there would be in person. And so it's almost like this tolerance level that's been set up, so then they need more and different stimulation in person. So it can really cause a lot of issues in marriages and that, you know, just other intimate partner situations, okay? And another thing about this is, and I know someone that one of my clients has happened that they met someone through a dating site. They ended up doing some sexual things on Skype and found out that this person then said, you know, I've recorded this. I am going to send this out to people you know through social media, through, you know, all these different ways, unless you send me money. So that's just kind of a whole other consequence to some of this stuff.
And I've read too a lot about, like how you said kids were introduced to it at 10 or 11. Like by the time they start doing their little, you know, children flirtation, whatever, I don't even know what you call it, but the expectations, exploration, the boys have these ideas that these, you know, 10, 11, 12, 13-year-old girls should be doing, you know, X, Y, and Z. Yes. And the girls, they have to, because that's the expectation.
Right. And so then they feel like this, or because, yeah.
And they've seen it too, so they think that that's
exactly
normal.
Right. Yeah, and then, I mean, even, you know, again, this is in this other talk, but about how, I mean, it's such a young age, they're getting sexting texts and pictures and all this stuff through, you know, whether it's Instagram, Twitter, wherever. So it's a huge, huge issue. Cyber relationships, so whether it's to, you know, have that surge of kind of the love addiction kind of surge of feelings, or they're meeting up to go have sex. I mean, the woman out in Utah, I'm sure y'all probably know quite a bit about this. I believe she was, you know, going to meet someone that she had met off one of these sites, and you know, so people are putting themselves in really, really dangerous situations too.
It's not just dating sites, Facebook.
Oh yeah. I mean,
Facebook's online solicitation is
Facebook is doing online dating, I saw on the news too now.
what's that?
I think Facebook's doing the dating thing, I saw on the news too.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, really, people reach out through any myriad of social media platforms. And then net compulsion, so gambling, gaming, stock trading, auctions, you know, Bitcoin, like all these things that people get really obsessed about. And not only is it sucking away time and it's messing up, you know, relationships, but then you start talking about financially. It's really affecting people financially. Same, you know, shopping and all that stuff. So, and then information overload, like surfing, researching, YouTube. I mean, how many people, if you don't have to reach, how many people know somebody, right? Yeah, a friend or a friend of a friend, or maybe a cousin, right? Who you know, started watching something on YouTube, like a funny cat video, and then 3 hours later you're like, oh my gosh, what am I watching? How did I get here? Like, what just happened? What time is it? Did I eat? I haven't slept. You know, it gets out of control. And it just, I mean, if you have nothing to do, then you can just kind of get sucked down this rabbit hole. And then, you know, for younger kids, they start watching something, and then things just kind of flow, and then all of a sudden they're watching inappropriate things,
Yes.
and they weren't really meaning to maybe, but something pops up, and you know, so that's how a lot of kids just kind of happen upon some of these questionable images that then lead to pornography. The shopping, and then social media. So, I mean, I'll talk more about more of the implications of some of these things in a minute. In gaming, so either online or offline, so whether it's a console game or a computer game. And the thing is like, kids these days, I sound so old when I say that, but they, I mean, even into adults, you know, this is a social network for them. And it's something that a lot of parents just don't get. And it's having a lot of implications in, you know, the way people are interacting socially. Anyone think of anything? I mean, I know I'm sure I've left things out, but.
And one more thing, one of the things that the police officers brought up in a different talk was that you have to be aware that now within the games that they play, if they have a connection to an online at all, through their phone or through their whatever, they're actually talking within the game.
Oh, yeah,
so
yeah.
predators come and then they
Absolutely.
groom them, and there's all types of things, so that and that impulse to interact and have friendships, besides just the impulse to play the game.
Right, that's what I was saying, like the social network within those gaming situations that a lot of parents don't get. Like, kids will say, these are my friends, you know?
I
Well,
think I heard someone speaking like in my son's room, and I thought it was like,
oh yeah.
I was up there, and it was like, oh well, he added me on this game, and I'm like, he added you as a friend requested you, and you're 8.
Yeah. Like, no,
Who
no,
is
no.
speaking into your game? That sounds creepy. That, you know, I didn't even know that was.
Oh yeah, big time. Uh-huh.
And being kind of a Google expert, I happen to know that there is so much misinformation online.
Oh yeah.
There is so much misinformation, and I've seen kids get caught into radical diets, radical ideology, and things that just, and there's a lot of it that's not good.
Yep, it's, yeah, there's a lot out there. The DSM-5, so there isn't, so gambling disorder, it was reclassified from an impulse control disorder to behavioral addiction. And this is going to be helpful because there are other behavioral addictions out there, such as shopping and work and sex and all that stuff. So that's a shift. And then also internet gaming disorder is an area of further research. So with every time they come out with a new DSM, they have these areas where they're going to research it more. You know, we're going to keep looking at it. We'll come out with another one. They'll spend another $150 on another book. We're going to change things to make, you know, anyway. But that is something they're going to look at more as well. And so one thing, and I have my references on the last slide. So if y'all, you know, want any of this or whatever, let me know. But they say internet addiction disorder ruins lives by causing neurological complications, the internet. So someone who just like, you know, every few minutes, let me see if I got likes. Let me see what they did. Who's doing what, you know. The use of internet is increasingly to achieve the same satisfaction. Sound like anything you know, tolerance, that idea. Efforts to reduce, control, stop usage have been unsuccessful. So you have your loved one who's just like using it too much, on their phone too much, gaming too much. You're like, hey, just stop. Just slow it down a little bit. And they're like, oh yeah, I will, totally. And then they're even, you know, there's one on here, sneak, you know, and it is, as I was preparing for this talk a while back, in doing research, there just isn't that much solid research out there on it. Very, very, very few clinicians who you could say like specialize in this area, because partially there isn't this, I think, this understanding within our field of what would a specialty look like. Like what needs to be there, what kind of education, what kind of, you know, what is the treatment protocol? We don't know those things. And so, I mean, it's similar to about 15 years ago, I really started working a lot with the non-suicidal self-injury population, right? 3 hours have gone by, and dang it, you know, I could have done laundry, I could have gone on a walk, I could have done all these things, but instead, I surfed the internet for 3 hours. Kind of time suckage, right? Jeopardizing loss of relationship, job, opportunities. I mean, this happens a lot with people that get caught at work surfing the internet. Maybe, I mean, the majority of people looking at pornography happens at work because they don't want to be caught at home doing it. So they look and just losing connection with people. So whether it's a parent playing a game or surfing the internet, losing connection with the child who wants to like hang out with them, or it's, you know, kids not knowing how to connect with each other on a one-on-one, in a group, in-person social level. I mean, it's a big problem. So that's, you know, certainly happening. Lie to continuum. There isn't this clinical, you know, it's not in the DSMs. People can't really, they're not studying it all the same. So there's no kind of objective way of studying it. So, I mean, some will say up to 11%, 8%. I mean, I err on the side of the percentage of incidents is much higher than it ever says because people are underreporting, they don't know how to measure it. So it's a lot. Can we just say that? Like, it's significant that it is a problem. And I'll tell you, in my practice, I don't know, 90% of the people that come in, there is some clinical thing going on that is related to something here. Whether it is FOMO, the fear of missing out, self-esteem issues, parents frustrated with kids for behavioral problems, getting on or getting off or not being allowed to use their devices, spending tons of money, going in debt. I mean, this is a consistent problem with the clients that I see. Anyone else have that, like in their practice, they're seeing a lot of this increase? Raise of hands, yeah, for sure, yeah.
So can you go back a couple slides, Margery, go back to number one, right there. So just for a second, let's take a minute. I'm thinking about me 30 years ago, no internet. So I surfed. We went out every morning. And I was late for school. Played basketball every night. People come out screaming, looking for us. We lie about it. We get up and we go midnight golfing at midnight. Put all this camouflage gear around this golf course. There's no internet. We were doing all those things. And we had a friend. I remember a friend of mine. She would go shopping and she would buy towels. I don't know why. She's always buying towels and taking them back. My mom's friend. I thought, God, that's some weird friends. but all of those things happen. There's no internet. So the internet's not the issue here. We gotta be careful because we can spend an awful lot of time saying, if I can get you off the internet, I'll solve the problem.
Right.
That's not the problem. It's addictive behavior.
It's the vehicle for the problem.
But it doesn't matter. It's not the problem. It's a symptom of the problem. We gotta be real careful because a lot of people want to spend a lot of time saying, I'm a specialist in internet addiction. No, you're either a specialist in addiction, doesn't matter because I'm the same guy. I got addicted, I went from basketball to drink.
Yeah, I mean, I certainly that's a good point. We'll talk about treatment and all that stuff.
I'm sure there are people doing, they used to have adult video shops.
Yeah, but the thing, the thing. You're over off of 35. So yes, Phil, I mean, absolutely to your point, and we'll get to that. I mean, it is a symptom of a bigger issue. The thing that I have seen is that kids are getting exposed to things. So, and that is a problem. Japan, 30 years ago. Like, it's not happening. And so there are things that are specific to what the internet and social media is bringing to us clinically. I see it in my practice. Now, the core issue, if there's an addictive issue, there's an addictive issue, right? But there are some specifics that do really relate to internet and social media, the access to it, the stimulation. You know, there's certainly something there.
And I would say this about that. I agree that addiction is the underlying issue. But we know that whatever the addiction is, that availability of the product, right, makes a huge difference in the amount of usage, right? And this availability, this product is pandemic. It's not something that an 18-year-old can sneak off into the liquor store and get somebody to buy, somebody who's 21 years old. This is something that a 5-year-old can access and are accessing. So the wide availability of it makes it pandemically problematic, right? In our culture, it is different in that sense.
Pointed out younger age now, and it's setting the stage for the behaviors much later down the line too. So some of the other things, and we've talked about some of these, and I know I probably only have about 10 minutes or something. Yeah.
I think you're probably just about to speak to this. But also, something different with internet, particularly gaming, is the type of influence it has on particularly young people.
Which is, you know, hugely problematic. So, I mean, some of the different things being neurological changes, we already kind of touched on that, the pathways, dopamine, serotonin. So these are the feel-good chemicals. And again, our brain and our bodies don't know the difference between reality and fiction. So if through watching something, experiencing something online, we have this surge in dopamine, then we go and we try and experience it in person with someone and we don't get that same level of dopamine, well then we're gonna do something to get it more, okay? So maybe that's riskier sexual behavior, or, you know, so that's where the brain chemicals come into play. The reinforcement and reward. So this is basic behavioral psychology here, okay? First of all, when you're on your phone, I mean, probably have about maybe 5 different apps that you're checking, whether it's email, Instagram, Facebook, like whatever. And while you're checking those, you can flip back and forth between so many of them, and your brain's just like, woo, I'm gonna look at that, and this is cool, and you know, and everything's just coming in. You get alerts, and you're like, I don't know, I posted something earlier on Facebook. That was funny. It sounds like yours. You're like, what? Not mine. Or who has a smart watch that buzzes? Do you ever get like the fake buzz feeling? You're like, oh, like it feels like it right now. Right now. Now that I mention it. So there's that, but then there's also this intermittent reinforcement. So again, very basic behavioral stuff here. Intermittent reinforcement is the most powerful form of reinforcement. It's like slot machine. You don't win every time, but that keeps you going back. So this is why, you know, gambling can be so addictive too. And so with the internet, with social media and whatnot, you're constantly going on because you might get a comment on a picture, or you might get this, or you know, there's this intermittent reinforcement which makes it very difficult to extinguish. A genetic predisposition. So some people are born with lower levels of these feel-good chemicals. I mean, this is, you know, there's a genetic component to depression for many, many people. So it's kind of the chicken or the egg for some of this. You know, what came first? Is it that they're on their social media so much that now they have this lower self-image and it's leading to depression and or the anxiety or whatever? Or did those things come first and now they're trying to fill it with, you know, who I can't say, you know, but you can probably figure that out for individual clients. But things like depression, OCD, ADHD, anxiety, poor impulse control, or other addictions. So if someone's already addicted to other things, most likely this would be easier for them to be addicted to as well. Sit on the internet, drink a lot of beer, it kind of goes together, maybe smoke pot, play some games. So, so the repercussions, the clinical implications, I mean, some of the big, we've talked about a lot of these, but like some of the ones that I really see with my emerging adult population, kind of the failure to launch crew, which I work a lot with, and with the high, like junior high and high schoolers, they don't know eye contact, what's that? Really? Oh, let me talk to you. I mean, they'll sit in groups. I have parents tell me this all the time. They'll have, their kid will invite friends over, and they're not talking to each other, but they're on their phones talking to each other, or you know, it's like, it's crazy. I mean, growing up, we had to learn how to connect and interact and solve problems and this party. Maybe the kid doesn't care, but now mom cares. And now, you know, so, and then they kind of start putting some of that anxiety and stuff off on the kid. Look at all that. Modeling behaviors, parent to child, so kids are watching us, right? And immediate gratification, this is a big one, huge in our society these days. People just expect to have this immediate reinforced great feeling, and that's just not, I mean, that's not life, right? External versus internal validation. So, you know, clinically work on people to validate themselves for who they are, to work on their self-worth, and kind of not, it's not as important if you only got 5 likes on this picture today, but you know, last week you got 50 on this one. Like, does it really change how valuable you are? I mean, some people really feel that it does. So, development, bonding, behavioral addiction, financial implications. So we all kind of talked about all those. Are there other ones that anyone has seen consistently, either in their practice or kind of in just life?
So I do a lot of work with couples, and then I also work with relationship issues. So clients will come in like after a breakup, and then the inability to kind of move on because they're stopping their social media, or getting.
The reaction that I saw, 70% is nonverbal. The reaction that I saw as a bully was just so, like, it actually would devastate me sometimes. I didn't apologize. I would walk away knowing I can't do this anymore.
Yeah. But
behind the screen, I don't get that nonverbal cue.
Right.
And so I just continue to do it.
And it's 24/7. It
Yeah.
can be. I mean, I'm so glad when I was like growing up. I mean, I was bullied in junior high, like bad. But thank the Lord, I was able to go home and in the safety of my home with my parents, like heal from that. And
Flower Mound, mean people are on there. Everybody's like, the parents are mean, and then they're taking pictures of other people's kids because they park crooked, and here's your license plate. You're like, oh my God. And this is just like one little town.
Oh yeah.
Of crazies.
Totally clinical term. A town of crazies.
I mean, it's so bad, and the kids are like learning that from the parents because it's a problem.
That modeling of behavior.
At the end of the day, I think it's a core issue of the fact that social media is alienating ourselves from ourselves and other people.
Yeah.
We don't know who we are as a person, as an individual, and we don't know how to interact internally and personally, and then we also certainly don't know how to do that with other people because of this barrier.
The social cues. We're not comfortable with the social. We don't know social cues in the same way. And
do you have any like the newest trend that I've been noticing? Because I'm like on the edge of, I wasn't born with a phone in my hand, but at the end of high school that kind of happened.
Yeah.
What I've noticed as I've gotten older though is that there's this like filter thing happening. So people are actually like genetically modifying their bodies so that they look different filters.
All right, let's, everyone's getting restless. I know. Treatment. Substances first. Treat, like if there's a substance addiction, treat that. We got to get that working, okay? Co-occurring, usually there are other mental health issues going on, depression, anxiety, OCD, all that stuff. Multidimensional approach to treatment. this isn't just like, you just treat this thing. Like, there's so much going on underneath it, which I think is plenty of time. Are there any quick questions before Scott, like, yells at me?
The only thing I was gonna add is for those of you that have iPhones, I challenged myself to this. If you guys know about the screen time feature, it actually shows you your history of like usage.